attributed from a Facebook video. Casey, why are you conflating Netanyahu with Israel? I am not able to understand that. Holding Netanyahu to account will be the job of the Israeli voter. Carmen, by the way, who said this to me, is a critic of the Netanyahu government. Are you making a mistake in conflating the two? Is the Congress making a mistake in choosing this timing, as Ambassador Dayal said, to talk about two states, the rights of the Palestinian people, calling for a cessation of hostilities before Israel has even had the right to its own retaliation?
Barkha, I don't think you read my piece today in the Asian Age. I've recounted there how the defense minister of Israel protested and said, you have no business to be going after the judiciary. This conflict that you're creating is affecting the defense forces. The debate is starting. It's a voluntary force. And if people are going and protesting, tomorrow they'll be fighting in the Israeli defense forces. So Netanyahu sacked him. Then there was more protests, then he took him back. Head of Shin Bet, their intelligence agency, said he is apparently told the government, unless you stop the terrorism which the settlers are committing against the Palestinians, you are creating counter-terrorism. So it's not a debate which has not taken place in Israel. It's been happening for some time. So Netanyahu has allowed this to happen because he wanted the judges to be controlled because he's got corruption cases. His extreme right wing wants the judges to be controlled because they want to change the nature of Israel. They want to make it a much more orthodox Jewish state. So there is a big fight which has been going on in Israel. Part of the problem is that is why the intelligence was distracted. The defense forces were distracted. They didn't pay enough attention to what was happening around Gaza. And that is what emboldened the Hamas people to come in. I'm not saying what Hamas did is right. It's absolutely wrong. By all means, it has to be condemned. But at the same time, why has that situation arisen? We cannot ignore it. You can't simply just join a posse and say, no, let's go and hang some people. This is a very emotional way of doing it. We are analyzing it. And governments don't take emotional stances. They take measured stances, as the Chinese have done, as even the Americans are doing. So we have to take a position and say, this is bad. But at the same time, we must find a permanent solution. The Saudis have stepped back today from any engagement with Israel. The Saudi Crown Prince has spoken to the president of Palestine. He's spoken. So everything you did on the sidelines of G20, in your I2, U2, in the new security order America was creating is today upended. It's upside down. And Hamas, of course, has done it. But the question is, Hamas needs an environment in which it grows. The virus needs an environment. Okay. And Netanyahu has provided that environment.
Sorry. Yeah. Complete your sentence. Just complete your
sentence. Has provided that environment by his politics since last January.
Let me get
He's brought the country to the brink of this.
And again, Dr. Mohan Kumar, when you use the phrase, let's end the fake moral equivalence, I don't think you were holding a brief for Netanyahu. I think, are we mixing up issues here? How do you respond to what Casey has said? Dr. Mohan Kumar.
So I think my response would be as follows. This is the Prime Minister basically tweeting that we are with Israel. That's how I read Prime Minister's tweet. I don't think he has mentioned Netanyahu. He has said we are with Israel, we are with the people of Israel. And I think that's fine. Israeli people is fine. I also think we don't have a comprehensive statement from the Ministry of External Affairs yet. This is just a tweet from the PM. There has been another phone call and another tweet. Maybe an MEA statement will come out at some point. That might make a reference to our long-standing position and so on. My general reaction to my very, very senior colleague, Ambassador K.C. Singh, would be that when you have events like this, I do not believe you can delve into who cast the first stone and who committed the original sin. That is the case with the Russian-Ukraine conflict. That is the case which is going to be with this issue as well. You are absolutely right, Ambassador Singh, that when you say that there is now the wind behind Israel, we will see how long this is. But I think the fact that Hamas has gotten into Israel and committed these unspeakable crimes will essentially mean, and for me that is a bit of an issue, frankly, Israel will get a carte blanche now, frankly, and they will actually move into Gaza. And then, of course, we will have to wait and see what statement we make, because I can only think of unspeakable things which will happen. Hamas has done this deliberately to actually change the order of the Middle East. They did not like a rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Israel. They did not like the Abraham Accords. This is not something that Hamas has done on the spur of the moment. This is a deliberate attempt to really counter the rapprochement which is happening in the region. I'll make two statements, Barka, if you allow me. The Middle East, from my 4.5 years experience as ambassador in Bahrain, Middle East consistently produces more geopolitics than it can consume. First. Second, what happens in Middle East never stays in the Middle East. And my worry is actually, which I've written about, this takes the focus away from Russia, Ukraine. It takes the focus away from Indo-Pacific. It goes back to the American electoral season. Joe Biden has to do whatever it takes now. This is the whatever it takes, which is really actually genuine. It's not the whatever it takes that he said about Ukraine. This is the whatever it takes, because Israel will be important.
And the Americans have begun to move warships and aircraft carriers into the region. Ambassador Dayal, let's take this as a cue to discuss the larger geopolitics. Other countries are going to be drawn in. There is one opinion that is holding Iran responsible. Several Israeli commentators saying without Iran, there would be no Hamas. There is Qatar in the middle. There are reports that Qatar may help negotiate hostage release. We don't know. But as Dr. Mohan Kumar said, what happens in the Middle East consumes actually the entire world. The normalization attempt by the Americans between the Saudis and the Israelis has already happened. Ambassador Dayal, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I would like to mention that while the Chinese had initially come out with a very mild statement in regard to the recent crisis between Hamas and Israel, they have now come out with a much stronger statement. And this happened after the meeting which Chuck Schumer had today with Xi Jinping. And he implored Xi Jinping to come out stronger. And that is why the Chinese have now issued a much stronger statement condemning the terrorist act committed by Hamas. Now, Ambassador K.C. Singh was absolutely correct in saying that Netanyahu is dancing to the tune of the extremist right-wingers. But in the light of what has happened, the barbaric terrorist attack by Hamas, Netanyahu will now have to act even more strongly, because he's looking as if he's heading a government which didn't have a clue that such an attack was going to take place. The people of Israel, if you read their media, are speaking out aloud about the failure of their intelligence services, which are otherwise rated very high. So what will happen is that the people whose cause Hamas wants to support are going to be hurt really big time, because Netanyahu, due to the force of circumstances, will have to go really hard at Gaza, at Hamas, and therefore at innocent Palestinian civilians who are just eking out a living and who are having a miserable life in any case. Now, Ambassador Mohan Kumar very correctly drew attention to the geopolitics which surrounds this entire thing. You know, I started off my diplomatic career with a posting in Egypt. Now, the 48-49 First Arab-Israeli War, the Suez War of 56, the Six-Day War of 67, the Yom Kippur War of 1973, all these were regarded as Arab-Israeli wars. Arab countries like Egypt, Syria, and Jordan were fighting for the rights of the Palestinians. But then during my posting in Egypt, President Sadat signed the Camp David Accord with Israel, and Egypt became the first country to normalize relations with Israel.
Yes.
One after the other. Jordan normalized, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan. Now, there were also ongoing talks between the Saudis and the Israelis. And Hamas had reason to be concerned that the cause of the Palestinians was being sidelined. So it decided to do something, and it named this attack the Al-Aqsa flood because it gave a religious dimension to this entire situation. So what is going to happen is things will steamroll further, they will go out of hand, and as I said earlier, the innocent Palestinian civilians will be hurt even more than they already have been hurt.
So let me come to General Hasnain. As that is inevitably going to happen, because although the Netanyahu government said to the civilians in Gaza, get out, those of you who can, there's really no place for them to get out to. Even all the food, the electricity, all of this goes from sort of the Israelis into Gaza, as you well know. A ground incursion in the south, the Hezbollah in the north, the Americans sending warships in. What are we actually looking? Are we looking at the contours of a global war? Are other countries going to be pulled in?
Good question, Barkha. The American movement of its forces into the Mediterranean areas, the Eastern Mediterranean area, is obviously a lot of gunboat diplomacy. It isn't really designed to carry out any military operations. I don't think that's going to come down to it. To take on Hamas in the Gaza Strip, you don't require U.S. forces support. The Israelis don't require it. What is of greater concern is that of Hezbollah and Hamas put together. Not in the past, anytime I can remember, when there has been a coordinated military operation on their part together. Even in 2006, it didn't work out that way. Subsequently, there have been sporadic, small-scale kind of operations, but the Hezbollah has not come to the assistance of the Hamas. Now, if there is actually a Iranian-Syrian question here, if they are the ones who are deeply involved in this and they think that it is in their interest to carry out certain actions here, operations here, to upset this entire rapprochement going on between the Saudis and Israel, that's a different question. Though I don't think it's really going to come to that. They've already denied it. There isn't any evidence to really point fingers at Iran yet. So I think it's going to work out purely as an Israeli operation on Gaza. As far as the displacement of population is concerned, already 200,000 people have moved within Gaza, nowhere else. The only other outlet, perhaps, an external outlet, is towards the Gaza, from southern Gaza towards the Sinai. That is controlled by the Egyptians and the Egyptian army. I'm not sure whether Egypt would want to come onto the wrong side by trying to open up its border and absorbing people and coming in from Gaza, etc. I think it will stay there and seal the border. And so the Gazians are basically just left to their whatever is going to happen to them.
But that is